So sorry if there's weird tech issues, but we will focus on Zoom in just a moment. And I think it's starting to work. And we will dive into our content in just about, we'll give it another minute. And I think, there we go. All right, we're here. So we are streaming on YouTube and we're of course here on Zoom. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave comments there on Zoom, enter questions in the Q&A function. All right. Well, let's see how many people we have. Okay, we have a lot of people here.
Many.
So I think now is a good time to get started. Do you want to give it one more moment, Mike?
Well, it is a couple of minutes after.
Yeah.
I'd get rolling. We've
Let's
got,
get rolling.
yeah.
So we're going to talk. Okay, what is the subject today? We're talking about planning and really estate planning in a time of uncertainty. What can you do to protect yourself, your family, your assets in times of relative chaos? There's a lot to go through here today. If you have questions, you can enter them in the Q&A function. I am Mark Gilfix. I'm here with my father and boss and colleague, Michael Gilfix. We're not going to spend much time talking about ourselves because that's not what this is about. Although I do always want to point out that Michael Gilfix is really the founder of the field of elder law, has been doing this for over 4 decades. So he brings a lot of wisdom to this. And I try to bring the next generation wisdom to all of this. But, we really love doing these and we appreciate everyone being here today.
I'm going to take a second to really emphasize that we do have different perspectives. I mean, mine is the older generation's perspective, and Mark's really is the next. And that is invaluable as we do our work, our research, develop programs like this. Having those two views of the world and of assets and investments and planning, invaluable. And I think that'll come through many times as we proceed today.
Yep. And the focus today is, again, planning in times of uncertainty. What can you do to protect yourself, your family, and your hard-earned assets? Um, and I think this might resonate with a lot of people. Do you just feel overwhelmed? Do you feel confused? Are you just worried generally? Are you exhausted by politics and talks of trade wars and tariffs? Have you hoped do you want to just save all that you work so hard for? I mean, we work so hard for what we're able to earn during our lives and our careers. You want to just make sure that's there for your loved ones. And I really mean this. The information that we discuss here could potentially, with the right guidance, the right expert work, be worth millions of dollars to your family when we're looking across generations. And I mean this even if you don't consider yourself wealthy. If you just consider yourself middle class, you just have just some limited assets, this still could be worth millions of dollars when you look across generations. So pay attention here. I think there's some really powerful stuff we're going to go through. 3 key points, and I'm going to come back to these over and over again. And we say this in all of our talks. One, hope is not a strategy. Hope that everything will just work out well, that's not a strategy. Two, control what you can control. There is, needless to say, so much that we cannot control in the world when it comes to the economy, when it comes to international politics, when it comes to family issues, even. Control what you can. And I've learned this through my own trials and tribulations in life and health challenges I've had to go through. And three, there are a few high leverage moments in life, meaning if you take the right step now, it's like choosing a partner, who you marry, starting a business or not starting a business, deciding to buy the house or not buy the house or the rental. A few decisions in life can have massive disproportionate impacts on your life, your loved ones' lives, your kids, your grandkids' lives. And the tools we're going to talk about today, they are those high leverage tools, those high leverage decisions. So keep that in mind as we go through all this, because that's what really estate planning is. It is high leverage stuff, but we're going to talk about what you can do, regardless of your background, to really take charge of that. So, Mike, let's go over what we're going to cover here today because it is a lot.
Yeah, and as kind of a corollary to what Mark said, one quick point. Inertia is our enemy. It's sort of the antithesis of all of those points that Mark just made about being proactive and taking charge of what you can. So try to drink in this information and don't just say, oh, I'll think about it for 6 months and act, because then you won't. We'll probably come back to that theme. Okay, what are we going to do today as we think about planning in very uncertain times? We've mentioned it. Planning matters more than ever. If you just lay back and let things happen to you, you're going to lose. Your family's going to lose. There are tools available to address the challenges, to avoid taxes, to preserve the family home. It's all there, but you have to do something. You have to be proactive. We're going to talk about estate and gift tax, what's going on right now, what's a snapshot of today's laws, what do we think is going to happen as we look to the future. Again, thinking about the future, thinking multi-generationally. The massive California property tax cliff. If there's and one major takeaway today, this may be it about what's going on in California,
Uh-huh.
property taxes and the threat on home ownership and the vacation home rental ownership for you and your kids and your grandkids. What are the key documents? What are the essential documents that everybody needs to have in place? And not just check a box where you get a simple form, but doing them right. A reasonable level of sophistication is absolutely essential. And when we talk about the secret tool to protect future generations, it's a kind of a trust. It's an approach that everybody needs to know about. 90% of us should utilize that approach for our kids, ultimately protecting them and the grandkids. And here's our theme again: control what you can control. And that means integrating the plan. We don't want to have the financial planning over here, ignorant of what's going on in the estate plan, ignorant of your tax planning with your CPA. How do you integrate that? Once you think about it for a moment, and Mark will develop this later on, it makes awesome sense to get things coordinated, think comprehensively in that sense. So we'll go through that a little bit later as well.
And we always have to point out this is for educational purposes only. This is not legal advice. We can't give you legal advice unless we're working with you formally as a client. So this is just to inform you, and hopefully it will give you some ideas and steps that you know you should take for you and your family. And we'd be privileged to help you with that. But we can only help you if you work with us directly. So just for background, for those who don't know us, I'll just spend just a brief moment on this. We are Gilfix and Lopole Associates, been around for over 40 years, based in Silicon Valley, but we work with clients from San Diego all the way up to Yreka. If you're in California, we can help you, and we have helped people throughout the state. Multi-generational team. It's not just Mike and I. We have amazing other attorneys. We have Francis Lopole, a longtime partner, Joshua Lopole, Jeff Mendelman, an amazing team and a wonderful experience. And the key here is we've worked with thousands of California families, and our mission is to deliver extraordinary return on investment. It's getting the right advice is an investment. We want to make sure that your family has incredible returns from that. So as we've talked about the theme here, I don't think you need me to argue this, but we live in very uncertain times when it comes to trade, when it comes to geopolitical issues, when it comes to the economy, the stock market. I mean, I have a friend who's from the hedge fund world, and he said what's happened over the last 2 weeks should never happen. Like the odds of the market, skyrocketing 4%, then dropping 6% and up 3%. He was like, that's a 1 in 10 million thing, but it's happening every week now. So things are so uncertain. AI is on the horizon. Is that going to take everybody's job? I mean, what's happening here? It's crazy times, and I think for those of you who have worked with me or heard our talks before, I'm a cancer survivor. And in addition to helping hundreds of families deal with major issues, I've been through my own issues. And I think if you have dealt with serious health issues or just serious crises in your family, I'm sure this will resonate. And the idea is control what you can control. When you're facing a lot of scary issues and challenges, there's so much you can't control. So you have to focus on what you can. And when it comes to estate planning, I think it's an amazing area of law and planning where you can control a lot, and you can probably control more than you think. And what am I talking about? What if you become incapacitated or sick? Who's going to step in and make sure your assets don't fall apart? Who will manage your investments, your cash flow, your bills in times of uncertainty if you can't do it for yourself? How can you protect your family from probate and massive unnecessary court costs and taxes? Estate planning, the tools we're going to talk about, those are areas you can control. And it's not just setting the estate plan up once, it's making sure that it's updated, that it's consistent with your thinking and your wishes. As your situation evolves and as your assets evolve. And Mike and I speak a lot about this. We write articles. We've written a couple books about this. We're going to have new versions of these books coming out, but we co-authored Special Needs Trust Creation and Management Guide. We co-authored a new version of Beat Estate and Property Tax Forever that's coming out soon. But we think about this a lot. We speak about it. This is what we live and breathe. So again, if you have questions, enter in the Q&A function. If we don't get to your question, we'll do it at the end. But let's focus in on what estate planning is, though. So here we're talking about, let's just do a little bit of estate planning 101. Especially in times of uncertainty, it is so crucial that your core estate plan is up to date, that you have one. So if you don't have one, get it into place. We would love to help you with this, but either way, you need into place. So what is a core estate plan? Well, it's really three essential documents. One is a revocable living trust, also known as a revocable trust, also known as a living trust. Another is a durable power of attorney for finances. And the last is really an advanced healthcare directive. Now, if you have kids, we believe that there is a fourth crucial document, one for each kid. We're going to talk about that later, but there are incredible trusts you can create for your kids. We call it the secret planning tool because most families don't know about them. We will circle back to that. But a revocable living trust, much better version of a will. If it's properly set up, properly funded, it ensures your assets are not stuck in probate after you're gone. They stay out of the courts, can save your family tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars right there. And they let you name backup trustees who can step in and help you manage your major assets if you're incapacitated. You have to make sure you have the right trustees, and you have to make sure you have the right trust structure. If you're married and you have the wrong trust structure, that can unnecessarily expose your family to hundreds of thousands in unnecessary taxes. Durable power of attorney, crucial in times of uncertainty. If you can't manage your day-to-day business of life issues, meaning bills, retirement accounts, running a business, running investments, the durable power of attorney lets you name the people who can step in to manage your day-to-day business of life issues. And it cannot just be a simple check the box forms. We'll explain reasons later why it's so crucial that it's set up right to anticipate major tax planning issues. Advanced healthcare directive, everybody over 18 needs this as well. If you're in the hospital, can't speak for yourself, who can step in, talk to doctors, look at your medical records, and make decisions for you if you can't do it for yourself again? And these are all documents that allow you to empower people that you trust and love and care about to step in and help you when you need it. So it's crucial to have the trust, the power of attorney, the advanced directive, and they have to be done right because they're only as good as their weakest link. So we help many families just to set up the core estate plan, but we're also going to talk about some next level planning issues to make sure you can protect assets for kids and grandkids. If you have a child with special needs, there's special tools for that. And Mike, it's not just though about the core estate plan. There's a lot more to it than just setting up the basic plan.
There is. Having a living trust is kind of a no-brainer for everybody. I think you know that. But again, there's many, many, many different kinds of living trusts. Many couples historically have used something called an AB trust, where it splits after the first death. Details don't matter. The point is that for most couples, that's not necessary anymore to achieve the estate tax protection. There are other benefits from an alternative approach that's arguably simpler. On the other hand, for many couples, it is appropriate to keep that AB trust structure, utilize other tools. If somebody's a non-citizen, there's something called a qualified domestic trust. So again, it's a generic term, a living trust. It doesn't mean there's one size fits all at all. So is the structure correct? That needs to be reviewed if we haven't looked at it and thought about it and talked with you in the recent past. Choice of trustees, wow, is that important? It gets too little attention. When you fill in a form online, you might just put down your oldest kid because he or she is your oldest kid. Well, the focus has to be on somebody who's going to be responsible. It's a job. So you really have to think it through, talk it through with us. There are alternatives if you don't have somebody in the immediate family. Lots of ways of dealing with that, but you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it thoughtfully and comprehensively. What about the structure for your kids? Did you integrate the planning that's going to protect assets your kids and grandkids inherit from you? There are ways of doing that. If you don't take appropriate steps, all these incredible protections can be lost. If you happen to have a taxable estate, we'll go through the numbers in a few minutes. There are many sophisticated tools that are available to reduce or eliminate estate tax. It's astounding. In our book, there's a chapter that's devoted to a summary of the most effective, important tools that are available to everybody. And we'll recurrently make the point that right now the level of estate tax protection is very high. We'll do the numbers. Who knows in the future? It could be dramatically lower. So again, planning now can save a small fortune as we look to the future.
Yeah. So having that core plan up to date is the table stakes, as we might say.
Yeah.
And Mike didn't even talk about property tax planning too, which is a huge.
Oh,
If you
we
have a
will.
house or a rental property you want to keep in the family, we're going to spend quite a bit of time later on that because that issue is not going away. If anything, is actually getting worse for families who don't plan. So let's now circle back to where we are right now. So let's talk about where we are in the political and legislative world and what that means for your plan. Now, we're not going to talk about really, you could break this down 100 different ways. We're really focused on what it means for estate planning and as it pertains to estate and gift taxes and property taxes. So again, I don't think you need me to convince you that politics is a little bit chaotic right now.
Ah,
And I think if you've been paying attention at all recently, you know that right now the GOP, the Republican Party, is in control of the federal government. But I think it's really important to note that they barely have a majority in the House, in Congress. I think it's 3 seats or something along those lines. So if one or two Congress people get sick or one or two holds out on a deal, they can uphold any type of legislation they don't like. Um, so keep that in mind. Mike, give us an overview of where we are today when it comes to estate and gift tax rules.
right. So today, frankly, it's remarkable. The level of estate tax protection for each of us, each individual, is almost $14 million. I mean, except for the one year where there was no estate tax, which was kind of a legislative error in a way at the congressional level, this is the highest it's ever been. I mean, it's astounding. So for a couple, it's like $28 million that can be passed along. So very few people are affected by the current estate tax because of this very high level of protection. The estate tax rate is 40%. So anything exposed to the tax gets a pretty big hit. 40% goes to the government, everything above the protected limit. The annual gift tax, most of us think in terms of the $10,000 annual exclusion. It started out being 10,000. It's gone up a number of times over the years, kind of an inflationary factor. This year, the level of protection is 19,000. So each of us can give away up to $19,000 to as many people as we like. Don't have to be related, and you don't report that to the IRS. And the receipt of that gift, by the way, is not a taxable event for the recipient either. So it's kind of a tax neutral way of shifting money out of your estate and to the next generation or others where it makes good sense for you, and it can be very tax wise. Currently, the law provides that we get something called the stepped up basis. Incredibly important for those of us who are older. We bought our house years ago for $100,000. Now it's worth $2 million. If we sell it, the capital gains tax would be enormous. But the stepped up basis means that upon our passing, if the property owner passes away, this thing called cost basis that started out being the price you paid increases to reflect the market value on the date of death. So if a home is then worth $2 million and it's sold immediately after that for $2 million, you subtract the $2 million new basis from the price that you obtained, and there's no gain, there's no tax. So it's incredibly important. We mention this because there have been threats to do away with that or limit it, but there's nothing on the immediate horizon that would take it away. We think it's solid. Same goes for stocks, mutual funds, all assets in your estate. They all get this thing called the stepped up basis. Okay, very important. Strategies to discount. This is an issue for those with larger estates or in the future if the level of estate tax protection comes way down. There's discounting opportunities. There are entities that can be used. So even if somebody if a single person right now has an estate of 18 million, 19 million, with proper planning, we can still eliminate the estate tax because there's so many sophisticated tools available. Again, there's been discussion of eliminating some of these. That discussion is gone. These planning tools will be intact. Okay. Current tax law, California Prop 19 to get some elaboration soon. That's in place right now. Nothing on the horizon is going to change it, as we will discuss in some detail. You have to be aware of Prop 19 and what it's doing to your family and property that you own.
And then that's for California, right? That's the biggest tax issue if you own property in
Right,
California.
right. So what do we think is going to happen? It does appear, for reasons Mark mentioned just a few minutes ago, it does appear that the current level of estate tax protection will be continued. There's a federal legislation that passed about 10 years ago in a 10-year term, and it was going to end at the end of 2025. Most commentators believe that this tax law is going to be extended, which means this level of like $14 million plus will continue. It'll continue to be ratcheted upward somewhat each year. So it'll creep upward to 14.4, 14.8, over a few years, 15 million. So
We
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 believe
think
that's the
that's the
future.
case.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
think
think
it's the
it's probably
case.
going to continue.
So for
All
many
explore
reasons,
so.
it might not happen. There are deficit hawks among Republicans.
Yeah.
You would think that many of them, given the statements they've made in the past, that they would oppose this because it's a big tax break. But they're silent so far. We'll see. In the event that it doesn't pass, in the event that that law is not extended, that law sunsets. It ends at the end of December 2025. And at that point, the level of estate tax protection is cut roughly in half. It'll go down to around 7 million per person. Still a lot. So for a couple, $14 million plus. So again, for most individuals, this is not an issue, but for many, those with wealth, particularly if the level of protection comes down, it's a major, major issue, given that 40% tax. Have to think about it.
Yeah, and let's expand on where we see laws going. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
current 2025 legislative status and outlook, given that there is GOP Republican control. Um, I think it's important that Mike went over this a bit, but there is a lot of uncertainty out there. And as we've talked about, the current law, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that was passed in 2017, is about to expire. And when it expires, unless new laws are passed to extend it, as we've talked about, the exemption, the estate tax exemption, among many other things, will drop by 50% to 7 million a person. Um, so again, right now it's 10 million. The estate tax exemption is indexed to $10 million per person. So that's why it's 13.99 million this year. But what do we think will happen? We do think that it is the most likely outcome is that the current, I guess, federal government will extend the current rules. They're going to do some version of extending the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, meaning we believe the most likely outcome is that the estate tax exemption, and we're not talking about other areas, the estate tax exemption will stay at about 14 million, 10 million indexed to inflation. So it will go up a bit every year, and a lot of people are worried about inflation this year. Maybe it will jump a lot next year if that's the case. However, there are a lot of holdouts in the Congress. The deficit is spiraling out of control. I have seen no analysis that says that tariffs or anything like that are going to tame the deficit. So if members of the House, and that's where things can really be held up, say, hey, we're not going to let the deficit get bigger, they might say, we're not going to allow the estate tax exemption to stay where it is. So it's possible there could be holdouts, and it's possible that the estate tax cliff could remain. So I think the main point we want to make is there are a lot of different outcomes. Nothing is certain, so we have to stay on top of this. We're, of course, going to keep you updated. Stay tuned to our YouTube, to our mailing list. Talk to us if you're an existing client. Set a meeting with us if you're not, but we can go over this, how it might affect you. Now, you might be thinking, well, my net worth's not over 7 million, in which case, yeah, you probably don't need to worry about this in the near term. But we're only talking about the next couple of years. Who knows what will happen in 4 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? So it's so important to keep a close eye on this. But we do think there's possibilities where there could be a middle ground where maybe it doesn't stay at 14 million, maybe it goes down to only 8 or 9 million or 10 million. And there's some scenarios where it could even go up. There's some Republicans want to get rid of the estate tax altogether. I don't see that happening given the deficit. As Ted Cruz, this is a quote from a couple months ago, said, this is going to take a long time, basically. Don't worry about the specifics. It's very complicated, lots of trade-offs. So it's going to take many months, and we don't know what will happen. So we have to keep an eye on it. And you have to make sure, going back to times of uncertainty, this is an area of uncertainty. You have to have that core estate plan into place, because what if you become incapacitated right as tax laws change? You need to make sure the people that you love and trust are empowered to protect your assets for you. And you have to have that right trust, power of attorney in place ahead of time, and ideally tools for your kids. So, Mike, let's talk about how GOP control at the federal level impacts us, those of us in California.
Sure. And I want to make a follow-up point really quickly that, again, right now, the level of protection is like 14 million per person. Those who believe the law will not be extended, or just want to lock in protections, it is possible. You don't have to die to capture that $14 million of protection. You can do it by gift. You can give the property away and get it out of your estate, and you eliminate the estate tax. Now, there's cost basis issues there, but just to say, many folks, a little on the conservative side, who have large estates, they want to take advantage of the very high level of protection while we can, before it goes away. So key planning point. Okay, so back to what we can't control, what we think is going to happen. We have SALT. Those are the limits on the amount of state and local taxes that can be deducted. It's currently just $10,000, which is a real punishment for high value for the blue states is often the reference, like Massachusetts, New York, California. This limit is punishing for those who pay high property taxes and other kinds of taxes. So we're hoping perhaps that level of protection will be expanded. There's much discussion on the part of both sides of the aisle about increasing the protection to 20,000, 30,000. Who knows? But that's an important point for virtually every single one of us. Uh, California, we love California, don't we? Never ending are the discussions of new taxes in California. Now, none of these proposals seem to have legs yet, but they're always percolating. One of them is the state estate tax. Now, years ago, California actually got rid of the state estate tax with a voter initiative, but that doesn't mean it's gone forever. So we watch it. We don't think it's going to happen right away, but it could. There's also some recurrent discussion of a wealth tax. And what is wealth? The whole question. Do you have to have over 20 million, over 8 million, over 100 million? Who knows? But that also keeps percolating. It just doesn't go away as an issue. Prop 19, federal law, doesn't touch this, right? This is a state issue. We'll go through why it's probably not going to change and why you have to be very proactive. Again, fighting inertia, that you don't just sit there and let things happen to you and your family. You got to be proactive here. So lots going on. We do our very best to track it and be sensitive to the tax law changes as we do planning for individuals and families.
And so, in light of all of this, actions we should take, we talk about this all the time. You at least need to have that up-to-date core estate plan, revocable living trust that's up to date, the right structure, power of attorney that isn't just basic check the box, actually can cover tax planning if you can't do it for yourself, and advanced directives. If you own a home and if you're fortunate enough to have rental properties or a family cabin or a vacation place, property tax planning under Prop 19 is absolutely crucial. We're going to dive into that in many of our other videos and later here in this presentation. The bottom line is don't wait until the end of this year. We don't know if the Tax Cut and Jobs Act will be extended. If you're even close to the estate tax exemption, or at least where it could go, which is again 7 million per person if they don't extend the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, or 14 million per couple. Big numbers, I get it. But if you own a house in parts of LA, San Diego, Bay Area, coastal California, that alone might put you close to these limits because you add retirement accounts, you add investments, you add life insurance policies. It's all part of your estate. So you might be closer to these numbers than you think. And they're punishing taxes. Don't wait to the last minute. We already talked about this, living trust, power of attorney, advanced directive. So we also think, again, we're going to talk about the tools you can put into place for your kids, regardless of whether you own lots of property or not, to protect future generations from unnecessary taxes and threats from third parties. Let's now transition. The California property tax cliff. Our most viewed videos online tend to be about this issue because I think there's a lot of ignorance and a lot of confusion about this. What are we talking about when we say a California property tax cliff? Well, if you own a house, if you've owned a house in California for more than 10 years, 15 years, if you're fortunate enough to own any rental property, commercial property, vacation place, you need to understand Prop 19, what it means, and more importantly, what you can do to plan ahead. Because if you own property in California and you want to leave it for future generations or really to anybody, whether it's your kids, your nieces, nephews, your grandkids, this is the biggest tax issue you likely face. If you want to hold it, it is at risk. And we're going to run through some numbers to show you why this new law can really force a lot of families to lose their long-held real estate. And Mike, it's not just about the numbers here, right? The family home is more than just a tax issue.
Yeah, we just can't overemphasize this. The home is the heart, is the hearth. It's kind of a old middle America value that really hasn't gone away. So, when we think about protecting the house for the family, some critics who don't buy this line of thinking would say, "Oh, it's worth so much money, you're forced to sell it. So what?" Well, it's not like that. The home matters. Where the kids, like, we had 3 home births at our house, we in the house. So it really means something to retain the family home, feelings, emotions, history. So we value this emphasis on the family home. That's why we work so hard to be able to protect the house for families and avoid this whole property tax issue, as we will explore.
I want to tell just a very quick story.
Yeah.
So because we're pretty well known around this issue of Prop 19, even outside of our client community, hundreds of thousands of people have seen our videos about this. And sometimes we get calls that come too late. And what do I mean by that? Well, I have people, I had a call just a couple months ago where a woman called and wanted frantically to speak with me. So we chatted and she said, "Hey, look, I hear you guys understand Prop 19. Here's my situation. My dad passed away not about a year ago, I think, at the point that she called us. And I moved into his house. It's the house I grew up in. It's worth quite a bit because it's in Los Altos. But I'm just a school teacher. I don't make that much money. And I thought I could just stay in my dad's house. And I just got a supplemental tax bill, property tax bill for over $30,000. I cannot afford that. I'm going to have to move and I can't, my family's going to have to leave the Bay Area. What can we do to protect the house?" And my answer was, there's really nothing we can do at this point. So we're going to talk about Prop 19. It does allow, if a child moves into their parents' home, a little bit of protection from reassessment. But if it's after you've inherited a house, it's too late to protect it. We have to take steps while a parent is still living to protect the house from massive reassessments. So if this is a worry for you, for your home, rental property or anything else in California, we need to plan ahead. So don't put your family in that position where they're calling us too late or where it's too late to take steps. So let's dive into
Let's do it.
what Prop 19 is and very importantly, where it's going. So
Yeah.
what happened in 2024?
Well, nothing. There was quite an effort to gather signatures to get it back on the ballot. Because again, Prop 19 was an amendment to the California Constitution, which means that the California legislature can't change it, can't fix it. It's up to another voter initiative. So 2 years now, efforts to gather enough signatures to get it on the ballot, unsuccessful. Frankly, they didn't even come close. And that's because there are many forces at work that support this aspect of Prop 19, who support more local tax revenue, people who aren't homeowners, they don't have a lot of sympathy. So nothing's really happening here. So again, we have to just think proactively. If you own the home, to avoid the property tax increase, we can't count on legislative changes before there's any possibility of getting this back on the ballot. It's going to take years and years and years of families experiencing this kind of pain. So again, it's the California Constitution. What happens if it's your residence and your kids do live in the house? Are there any protections? Let's go through what the law was and then what the changes are. Yeah. So let's have no illusions about what remains in terms of protections. Very little, if anything. Okay. Before Prop 19 became law, February 16, 2021, we had, of course, Prop 13, hallowed, holy Prop 13, which rolled back property taxes and then said there can be minimal increases over time. Then we had Prop 58. Prop 58 is really the key issue here because Prop 58 said two things. First, it said that you can pass along your residence to your child or children, whether or not they live in it, and there's no property tax increases. So multi-million dollar homes would be passed along to the kids with no property tax increase. So somebody bought a house next door, their taxes are $50,000 a year. You got your house from your mom, your taxes are $8,000 a year. I mean, that was routine, okay? What about other real property? In addition to the residence, Prop 58 said you can pass along up to another $1 million in assessed value for real property. So real common, there'll be a property worth $2, $3, $4 million, but the assessed value, which starts out being the price paid, could be $400,000, $500,000. So for most individuals, they also pass along the rental property, the vacation home, without a property tax increase. I mean, what a gift it was to the next generation. Well, then came Prop 19. So on February 16, 2021, everything changed. On the residents, there is a small break. It depends on where you are, by the way, when I say small. If you live in Wairika and your house value is $900,000, if your child moves in, there won't be a property tax increase because if your child makes your residence, his or her residence, the first $1 million in assessed value is forgiven. So if a house is worth $2 million and a child moves in, the new assessed value is going to be $1 million. There may be no property tax increase or a minimal increase. But again, key parts of California where property values are high, $1 million, it's a lot of money, but it doesn't even come close to doing it. If your child doesn't move in, there's no property tax protection whatsoever.
And they have 1 year, important to note, they have 1 year to do this. If they take too long and they don't properly make it their primary residence, they don't even get that.
Yeah.
Just want
Yeah,
to point
there's
that out.
paperwork that has to be filed, the homeowner's exemption. So there's a number
Yeah.
of steps you have to take, and then it looks like you have to stay there. It can't be, you can't move in, make
Yeah.
it your residence, and then move out and make it a rental. Looks like that's not going to work. So we have to be really careful about this. By the way, we have the we say a million. There's kind of a cost of living or a ratcheting up every year. The actual number this year is a million, 22,000. It'll go up a little bit each year, but
Yeah.
we'll speak in terms of a million to keep it
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
Okay, what about other property? If it's not the residence, there are no protections whatsoever. Property tax reassessment. That means whatever the property is worth on the date of death, that establishes the new assessed value. Property taxes can go up 5,000, 20,000, 80,000. Mark's going to do some great illustrations in just a couple of minutes. So
Yeah.
have to be aware of what the new law says and what it's going to be do to all families who own property. Have to plan to avoid this outcome.
Now, we obviously focus on the negative of this. I think one positive of Prop 19, though, is that it lets anyone in California with certain types of disabilities or who suffers from fire, loss of home in a fire, or Californians over 55 to move within the state and basically take pro rata their low property taxes with them. So if you move from, San Diego to the Bay Area and you have a valuable home with low taxes, you can move to the Bay Area, keep those low taxes as long as your primary residence. Keep in mind that doesn't solve for capital gains taxes. And so there are some positives of it, but what are some solutions to Prop 19? Well, we'll give one scenario where you don't need a lawyer at all, and that is if you want to leave your house to a partner, but you're not married to them. If you don't take some steps, your property would be fully reassessed when it goes from you to your partner. So one solution, get married. If you want to leave it to a partner, you can't do this with your kids, obviously. But if you leave a house to your spouse, there is no property tax increase. There are exemptions for married couples. But
And
that's
Mark,
a
and let's mention where there should have been an exemption, an exception. Special
yeah,
needs families where the
yeah,
child, special needs, has to live in that house. There's no
yeah,
other viable alternative.
no,
It's so frustrating. It's so upsetting that families who plan to keep the house for their child, bipolar, autism, whatever the diagnosis may be, those plans have been shattered for hundreds of thousands of Californians.
yeah.
Really an unintended consequence because they weren't thinking about that. So there should have been, but there is no exception or protection for a special needs child.
Now, let's walk through some numbers. I'm going to show you some detailed spreadsheets. I'm a former management consultant, recovering management consultant, so I love Excel spreadsheets. So don't worry too much about the specific numbers here, other than where we go. So let's say that you're fortunate enough to own a home worth $3.3 million with a $300,000 assessed value. So maybe you bought a ranch house in Silicon Valley because 3.3 million is a huge number, but in so many parts of California, that's not even a big house. It boggles my mind, speaking as the next generation that didn't get to buy houses for $40,000 as dad, you guys did for
No,
those
no, no,
fortunate to buy.
wait a minute. We paid 55,000.
All
Don't
right.
exaggerate.
Yeah. All right. So let's say that you have an assessed value that's been kept artificially low by Prop 13, $300,000 assessed value, $3.3 million fair market value. Let's say that your child moves in to your home after you're gone. The property tax increases over 5 years, over $115,000 in extra property taxes, over 20 years, over $500,000, over 30 years, we're talking about over 890, almost $900,000 in extra property taxes paid if your child moves in to the family home, if it's in this scenario, massive numbers. Let's say that they don't move into the house or they don't move out in time, or they move in and they move out and they don't get that $1 million in protection. Again, $300,000 assessed value, $3.3 million fair market value. The numbers are even bigger. Over 5 years, over 170,000, over 20 years, over 800,000, over 30 years, over $1.3 million in extra property taxes paid for one house. That's more than a third of its fair market value. And keep in mind, you can't deduct most of these property tax payments against your income tax. So it's essentially after tax money. So imagine how much your child or their family would have to earn to pay these extra taxes. To pay over $1.38 million in California in taxes, you might have to earn an extra 2 million. And by the way, think about what that money could do if instead of going to property taxes, it's invested. I mean, that could turn into 3, 4, $5 million. That's what I mean by even if your house isn't worth 3 million, maybe it's only worth 2 million, which is coastal California, so many houses, and you have low assessed value. We are talking about a multi-million-dollar swing in your family's financial future. Because if we can save these taxes, it's almost like saving $2 or earning two extra dollars. Because again, these are largely after-tax dollars that have to go to pay this. And think about the opportunity cost and what that money could do if it was invested and just earned 7% per year rather than losing all this money. So the numbers are staggering. Now, you might be thinking, well, like, that's great, Mark and Mike. Thank you for making me feel bad. But what can I do about this? Well, we already mentioned that at least if your child moves in, that at least we can get some partial protection from reassessment if it's your residence and if your child moves into your residence and makes it theirs within 1 year. But that doesn't provide much protection, especially in coastal California, Silicon Valley, Napa, Marin, LA, San Diego, Orange County. What can we do? Well, our firm has developed solutions, and we're not here to go through all the permutations here because there are many, but we have helped many, many families with this. Francis Lapole, he is our tax guru. He is, in my opinion, and understanding this field more, he's one of, if not the best tax attorneys in the state when it comes to real estate, property taxes, capital gains, and estate taxes. And he has developed a set of solutions. We're calling it generically the Gilfix and Lapole Dynasty LLC process, where depending on your situation, every family is different. There are countless permutations. We can set up plans where we can prevent properties from being reassessed, the primary residence and rentals. And we can still, in many cases, get the stepped up cost basis, meaning we can give your family the best case scenario, depending on your situation. We have to look at capital gains taxes, property taxes, estate taxes. There's a lot of issues here, but we can develop plans to keep property taxes low while still, in many cases, allowing for that crucial stepped up cost basis, eliminating capital gains taxes when the house goes to your kids. So with the right planning, we can protect the family home and any other properties that you own in California from massive reassessments. And as part of this process, we can even help to add tools to protect your kids, or at least provide layers of protection against future divorces or lawsuits or future taxes. So these tools are really, really powerful. They are optimized for your situation. No two situations are alike. The more we've done this, and we've helped literally hundreds of families in California with solutions around this problem, every situation is a bit different. So we really need to sit down with you and go through it. It takes time. It cannot be done in a matter of weeks. It typically takes up to a year to complete this, sometimes even more. Sometimes it's a little bit faster, but it takes a lot of steps. But the main point I just want to make here, talk to us. Let's protect the family home and the rental property if you're fortunate enough to have that. And it can work for nieces, nephews, grandparents to grandkids. It's not just parent-child. The solutions essentially take the house out of that realm of rules. So it is really, really powerful what we can do. So contact us if you have questions about this. We've already helped many of our clients and many people who have joined our client community I just talked to some families in Southern California earlier this week. We do want to make an important point here. In light of all the fires in LA and the massive loss, and our heart goes out to you if you or anyone in your circle was affected by the fires in Pacific Palisades or Altadena or anywhere. We are increasingly concerned about insurance in California. So if you have homeowners insurance, if you've worked with us on property tax planning, or if you have changed title to your properties to add trusts or put in a living trust or anything, contact your insurer and make sure that your coverage is up to date. We are increasingly worried that home insurers are going to look for technicalities to reduce coverage or make it more difficult. So just make sure that your insured parties, that you've talked to your insurance agent to make sure that insurance for your home, again, whether you've worked with us on property tax planning or not, make sure it's up to date. Sometimes people change title on their properties, they set up different trusts, and they forget to tell their insurer. Make sure it's up to date. We just want to make sure you're on top of that. But again, most importantly, talk to us if you're worried about property tax planning. We can help you, but it takes time and it takes some effort. So I hope that alone gives you some strength. And if you want to hold on to properties in your family, this is so crucial. Let's transition now to just kind of very important issues. It's not the focus of our talk today. We have a few good questions. If you have questions, please enter in the Q&A function or in YouTube in the comments section. We'll get back to those. Let's talk about the impact of current legislation on the future of long-term care, Medicare, Medicaid. What are your thoughts here, Mike, and where do you see this going?
Well, here we are again with this theme of uncertainty. We don't know. We've had promises about Medicare not being touched, but who knows? Things can be not touched and yet touched, indirectly by changes off to the side that nobody sees. So I won't go through some details, but I can see Medicare reimbursement levels being cut back, which I think could limit the number of providers, which could limit quality of care. Who knows? But on Medicaid, the current administration is very clear. They want to shave billions, and I hate to think trillions, from the Medicaid budget. Now, Medicaid is Medi-Cal here in California. So when you read about Medi-Cal here in California, that's Medicaid. That's what is threatened, without a doubt. Again, they're not hiding the ball. They're saying they are going to cut back that budget dramatically. So what might happen? Most talked about is this idea of stricter eligibility requirements. And that usually goes to whether or not an individual can work, setting the bar higher so that it's harder to establish yourself as a person who is disabled, which means you can't get and keep a job. So this has come up over the decades, time and again, sometimes at the national level, sometimes at the state level. And different states have different levels of demand in terms of what you have to show that you're disabled. California, surprise, pretty liberal. It's a little bit easier to establish yourself in this state as disabled and get government benefits than in many other states. But we expect stricter standards and guidelines, and I think a lot of eligibility cases are going to be revisited. So watch yourself, be aware of that. This is for folks, by the way, under 65 who are disabled. This point doesn't touch those who are over the age of 65 and who qualify. Okay, next key point on that is the threat to how much the amount of how much money the Medicaid program will be sending to the state of California. Right now, simple statement, the more California spends on Medi-Cal, the more the federal government contributes. It's kind of a formula. They're in lockstep. The proposal that has reared its head, that we've heard of many times over the years, is that would end. That California and other states would instead get what's called a block grant. In other words, we would get a certain number of dollars to do with what the state of California wants to do. So if that's hundreds of millions of dollars less, and it will be, obviously there have to be cutbacks. And already we have many medical care providers who won't accept Medi-Cal because there's more paperwork and there's lower levels of reimbursement. And if that gets tougher on both levels, if you're a doctor, you're in business as well. Hospitals will have a harder time making ends meet. All of these issues come tumbling down, and it's a source of great concern, and particularly for the special needs community. It underscores the need for long-term care insurance. It underscores the need for having ample funds in a special needs trust. So rippling effect that is pretty significant in this world of Medicaid. Then long-term care, a couple of words about that. 70% of us over the age of 65, some form of long-term care, we're going to need it. That's the consistent data all over the nation year after year. So the probability is that you'll need help at home or in a facility, and how do you pay for it? Very expensive. So point number one, we have Medi-Cal again, which can pay the cost of nursing home care. Last year, the rules changed. If you move into a nursing home tomorrow, you will be immediately eligible for Medi-Cal. Yes. They eliminated the asset cap. I mean, it's remarkable. Still a lot of planning to be done because you might have to use all of your income and have it go to the cost of care. Bunch of issues there, but dramatic change. Will that continue in California? I doubt it. It's very giving. It costs the state and the Medi-Cal program a small fortune. Immigration is a serious issue here. Most of our caregivers are from other countries. Around here, maybe it's Tonga, the Philippines. On the East Coast, it's Puerto Rico, it's Haiti. If immigration is dramatically restricted, there will be a shrinking supply of caregivers. And what does that mean? We're the age wave, us guys. We're the age wave. Our population is massive and we're growing. We're getting older every day. So our demand for home care services and institutional care is going up like crazy. The supply of quality caregivers, at best, is maintaining at the same level. It's probably going down. So that means the cost is going to go up.
Let me just add here, by the way, that it's our generation, my generation, that's going to have to be dealing with this, right? So if you're here watching this because you're worried about your parents, I already have a lot of my friends who are dealing with major issues taking care of a parent as they face long-term care issues. And the cost can be so high if they need help. And then what often happens is the kids, we're part of the sandwich generation where we have our own kids to take care of and our parents to take care of. And that can be, a lot of our clients say, I don't want to be a burden to my kids. Well, what Mike is talking about is so crucial. And that's planning ahead and making sure that, if you have long-term care insurance, our general advice is keep it because it's a lot harder to get now. It's a lot more expensive, even if your premiums have gone up. But that goes to the importance of integrated planning and making making sure integrated legal and financial planning and making sure that core estate plan, the trust, power of attorney, advance directive is up to date. That includes provisions around, Mike, you just talked about how the eligibility rules for these different programs could be changing. Well, you need to make sure that if you're incapacitated, your loved ones, the people you trust, are empowered via your estate planning documents to protect your assets, whatever that means as rules evolve. Sorry, any other thoughts there, Mike, before
No,
we
our
transition?
concern is, frankly, it's secondarily money and taxes. It's primarily, in this context, it's quality of life, it's quality of care. I mean, that's what planning is all about. Taxes are one issue. You know, where you find money for this or that, that's a different issue. How
Yep.
are we going to make sure that those of us who need long-term care get quality of care? If your special
Yeah.
needs kid might be 50, 60 years old, of course. Quality of care. That's what this
Yeah.
is all about. Integrating the tax planning, the government benefits planning, the special needs, integrating all of it to have it make
Yeah.
sense. It's a challenge. It can be done. That's the
Yes.
good news.
And the robot revolution may be coming where we have robot caregivers, but I don't think it's coming in the next few years. So it's going to take a little while. So don't rely on that either. So let's plan ahead and make sure we're really well situated. Let's transition to this. This is the secret trust of the 1% and how everybody should benefit from this. What do I mean? How can we protect assets for the future, for future generations? What can we do to provide protections against future taxes, protections against future divorces, protections against future lawsuits? Mike, how can we protect
Yeah.
assets for the next generation?
Simple. Our advice, don't leave a penny to your kids. Don't leave them anything. Problem
Well,
solved.
that okay. As the next generation, speaking of multi-generational planning, I don't know that I like that idea. So you're saying to protect assets, don't leave anything to your kids?
Yeah, is
Doesn't
there
make
an
much
alternative?
sense. There actually is. So I'm glad you asked, Mike. So let's talk about this. As Mike said, exactly the way you protect assets for future generations, don't leave a penny to your kids. That doesn't mean you're not leaving anything for their benefit, though. So it's how can you take your planning? How can you supercharge your planning? And this is a tool that we recommend for virtually all of our clients when they have kids and especially when they have grandkids. Mike authored an article in Bottom Line Personal Magazine about this. It's an amazing national magazine. So it's not just us saying this. He published this. It was vetted by multiple parties. We're not the first to talk about this. You can find that article, by the way, on our website or Bottom Line Personal Magazine. Go to their website. And what are we talking about? We're talking about instead of leaving anything to your kids, you create dynasty trusts for them. And when you hear the term dynasty trust, you might have an image of like, that's not me. Because when I first heard these terms, I was like, well, dynasty trust, I picture like dynastic wealth, like, well, now the Musk family or the Zuckerberg family or the DuPont family or one of these multi-generational billionaire families. And I pictured this, right? A dynasty trust. Like if you don't have a mansion like that, you don't need it. Although we always point out that a mansion like this in Ohio is probably costs less than a tiny house in Los Altos or in Silicon Valley. So anyway, the point being, these are not just for ultra high net worth families. We really recommend them for the vast majority of our clients. And again, this means if let's say you have two kids, son and daughter, you're not leaving anything to your son and daughter. You're creating a family protect. You have your living trust. But your living trust says when I'm gone, I am not leaving anything to my kids. I'm leaving money to a separate family protection trust for my son and a separate family protection trust for my daughter. They should be set up ahead of time. They should not be something that come into existence when you pass away because there's many uses for them while you're living. Why would we do this? Divorce. It's a massive problem. It continues to be a problem. Every other week, I meet with someone who's been through a rough divorce and they're updating their estate plan. If your child divorces and you leave money to them directly, if they commingle it, it could be lost. A large portion of it could be lost in a divorce settlement. If you leave it in one of these trusts and they manage it the right way, there should be a high level of protection for what you worked for from a divorce settlement. So all that you worked for during your life should be protected from your child's ex. Whereas if they inherit directly, it can be commingled and lost. If your child is sued, we live in an insanely litigious society. I think there's a lawsuit filed every second. So many of them are frivolous. They're just money grabs. Either way, if you leave money directly to your child, that money is absolutely exposed. If it's in a family protection trust, nothing is 100%. There's nothing you can do. And maybe there's steps going offshore, things like that. But you're creating a deterrent. You're making it harder for people suing your child to get to that money because, again, it's not theirs. It's in a trust. So you're creating a barrier and a deterrent. It's a lot better than them inheriting it directly. Um, Three, this is huge. And even if you don't consider yourself high net worth, look to the future. If you leave money directly to your child, whatever they inherit, plus everything that they and their spouse earns during their life is exposed to estate taxes when they pass away and when these assets go to current or future grandkids. So, money hopefully grows over time, even if you leave your kid $500,000 or $1 million. Hopefully that will grow, it'll double, triple, quadruple. We have no idea what estate taxes will be like in 10, 20, 30 years. 40-50% of that could be lost before it goes to the grandkids. If it's in one of these trusts under current law, all or most of it is protected from estate taxes when your kids pass away, which again, even if you consider yourself just middle class or upper middle class, could potentially save millions of dollars for your grandkids. And it lasts for 2 generations, even for your great grandkids. So it's really, really powerful. And you might think, well, this all sounds really cool, but I don't want to tie my kids' hands. I don't want them to have to deal with tons of complexity. Well, if you are okay with it, your child can be their own trustee. It doesn't always make sense, but they can essentially get the benefit of the trust and be in charge of it. And maybe you put age restrictions. Maybe if your kid's young, you say, I don't want you touching this trust till you're 35 or 40. Someone else is going to be in charge of it until then. But the bottom line is these trusts last for about 100 years in California. Nothing is perfect from an asset protection standpoint, but these are a lot more powerful than just leaving assets directly to your kids. And they last for 2 to 3 generations. They even protect your grandkids from divorce. The assets you leave them anyway, that flow to your grandkids. That alone is the reason why a lot of our clients are like, I just want to protect. I don't know when my grandkids are going to marry. I don't trust it. I want to put some protections for what I work so hard for. So not just for the ultra wealthy. Talk to us if you want to set up. Our version, by the way, are family protection trusts. The majority of our clients add them. Talk to us if you want to add this. This is one of the most, I think, powerful return on investment tools that we can add to your plan. They're not super expensive to set up, and they are just so powerful. So wonderful tools. Now we're getting towards the end here, and I've actually gone a little bit over the time that we talked about, but we've covered a lot. So I want to just pull it back. We live in times of insane uncertainty. And think about the best performers on earth, whether it's the CEO of a company, the best athletes. Let's talk about Steph Curry, for example. So Steph Curry obviously has Steve Kerr as his head coach. He has the Warriors staff that helps him. He has his own strength and conditioning coach. And I know he has a huge team of legal and financial advisors as well. So he's one of the best in the world. He has a huge team that help him in all areas of life, and even in the areas that you'd think he's the best. Well, he's the best shooter on earth. Why does he need a coach for shooting? I guarantee he's working with coaches all the time on his form, on his fitness, and all those areas. We all should have teams. We all should have that integrated team, especially in times of uncertainty. And what do I mean by that? You shouldn't just work with your estate planner once every 5 to 10 years and then maybe have an accountant who helps you fill in the numbers and maybe have a financial advisor. Ideally, everyone should be talking to each other, especially as your situation changes and as tax laws change. If you might have a great financial advisor or a great accountant. If they don't go through like property tax planning with you, that might be the biggest issue you have. Maybe your advisor is great at helping you get, above market returns, but one mistake from a tax planning standpoint can undo decades of good investing. One change in law that you don't keep track of, that you don't plan for, can undo decades of good work. Not having an estate plan in place where things are linked properly, where accounts are titled properly, can undo decades of good decisions and hard work. So we are forming the Gilfix and the Pole Family Office program. Regardless where we're working in an integrated manner with certain financial advisors we work closely with. We're trying to build accounting into that. Of course, if you have an advisor you like, we're always happy to chat with them and bring them into the discussion as well. But I think the key is you should have that team. You should not try to do it yourself. Don't rely on online tools. You need to work with experienced practitioners who understand this and who are humble enough to talk to other members of your team and work together in that manner. And we're always thrilled to do it. And if you want to talk to us more about that, let us know. There's really no additional cost to being part of our program. We can talk about that, but we think it can add extraordinary value, and it can help protect your hard-earned legacy. So let's get to kind of our closing thoughts here. And I think this is all really important. So what can you do to protect your future and your legacy and your hard-earned assets for your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, your friends, your loved ones? Steps in uncertain times, it is so crucial, especially in uncertain times, whether that's societal or just for you personally. You need an estate plan, and it needs to be up to date. If you don't have an estate plan, trust, power of attorney, advance directive, at least if you're over 18, you need this. You need to set up right away, and it should be done right up front. Don't just do the simplest forms. Those can leave your family hanging in times of need. And if you have a plan, when was the last time you addressed it? Have you looked at your backup trustee? Do you have the right living trust structure? If you're married, having the wrong structure can cost your family hundreds of thousands. We've talked about all the tools we can put into place to potentially save millions. Your power of attorney, does it include provisions around sophisticated tax and asset protection planning if you're incapacitated? Have you added special trust for your kids? If you have a child with special needs, do you have a special needs trust in place? We have a lot of videos about that. We've written books about special needs planning. If you have kids that don't have special needs, have you set up family protection trusts for them to provide multiple generations of asset and tax protection? If you have property, do you want to keep it for your kids, your grandkids, niece, nephew? Talk to us. There are massive, massive issues. Um, Let's circle back to estate tax issues. If you are single and you have a net worth of over 6 million, or if you're a couple, a net worth over 12 million, I know these are big numbers. Keep in mind, your house is equity in your house is part of this. You need to keep a close eye on laws, because while we think it's likely that the estate tax exemption, currently 13.99 million, will be continued, we don't know. We might not know until November, December of this year, of 2025. So keep a close eye on this. We're, of course, going to do our very best to keep our whole community up to date on this, but don't wait until the last minute. If we see an unfavorable change coming, we got to be ahead of the curve, because we will be inundated. We will not have capacity to help everybody if we see a negative change, negative from an estate tax protection standpoint coming. And again, I know we've harped on this so much, but there's so much ignorance. If you have California property, you want to keep low taxes for future generations, talk to us. And if you know somebody in that situation, maybe it's like your friend is going to inherit their parents' house soon, or you have friends who want to protect their home for their kids, talk to us. We're always happy to go through situations with people, and we can help almost everybody with this. It's incredibly powerful. And let's circle back to the points that I made at the beginning. 3 points for uncertain times. One, hope is not a strategy. Hope that everything's just going to work out okay. Hope that my family will find a way to avoid probate in the courts. Hope that someone will figure out how to help me if I'm incapacitated. Hope that my assets will be protected if my kids get divorced. It's not a strategy. We don't know where the law is going. We don't know what's going to happen to our families. Take proactive steps to protect your assets and control. You control. There's so much out there legislatively, from societal standpoints, from AI coming to take our jobs, geopolitical issues. There's so much we cannot control. But estate planning is an area where we really can assert a high level of control in really positive ways. And there are a few high leverage moments in life. I talked about that. Putting the right tools into place in your estate plan can have a massive and amazing impact on your family's legal and financial futures. And that leads to good lives, right? Money doesn't solve problems or provide happiness, but it gives you tools that can protect yourself, protect your family, and help to solve problems. So how can we help you? Well, first of all, stay in touch with us. We can follow us on our YouTube channel. We have nearly 5,000 subscribers now. We're getting up there. I'm on Instagram. I'm posting legal videos and little guidance videos. You can join our mailing list at gilfix.com. So search for us, Gilfix Law on YouTube, just my name on Instagram. But most importantly, take action. We hope we get the chance to serve you. If we're not fortunate enough to serve you, make sure you're talking to your advisors about this. But we would welcome the chance, no matter where you are in California. If you're in California, we can help you. Don't miss this opportunity. And by opportunity, I mean while it's top of mind. Because the moment you stop watching this, it's going to start to fade. You're going to get inundated with other messages, other videos, other issues, and you're going to put this off because there aren't really many deadlines. The deadlines are when you get sick, when you pass away. Now there are some deadlines coming. Like we see the Tax Cut and Jobs Act coming to an end, but we don't know if that will happen. But talk to us, and if you want to set a meeting with us, you can contact us at gilfix.com. You can call us at 650-493-8070. We have a different number online. They both work. Just find us gilfix.com. Search for us, Gilfix and Lopole Associates. It's not just Mike and I. We have an amazing team of other attorneys, and we're all we do is planning for families, estate planning, elder law, and certain areas of tax planning. So, we hope to get the chance to work with you and serve you. If you're an existing client, hey, come back. Let's talk. Let's review your plan. Let's make sure you're up to date. If you're worried about protecting properties, we can talk about your situation, go through potential solutions. But again, just take action, right? Like I think it's kind of healing to just do something sometimes. My own health challenges in the past, like 6 years ago, I've survived cancer. told that story elsewhere, and I'll probably share that again in the future. But when you're facing challenges, you have to find those areas where you can proactively take some control. And I think this is an area that's so powerful where you can do so much for your kids and grandkids. So let's talk about these issues. We hope to get the chance to help you. We did get some really good questions, so we're going to go through those in just a moment. And Mike, any closing thoughts before we go to some questions?
No, I just want to emphasize fighting inertia. There's so many reasons people make an appointment, sometimes don't come in. 2 years later, maybe they do. It's very human. So push yourself, make those
Yeah,
decisions. And on
yeah.
the questions, by the way, I'm going to say there's one person entered questions about medical. I'm not exaggerating. There's 8 questions, detailed questions. We can't do that now. Those questions suggest a real issue. You need to come in so we can sit down and go through the issues.
And along the Medi-Cal, Medicaid on that front,
Yeah,
there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't
yeah.
know. It could change dramatically in the next 6 months. So we do our best to plan for that. And I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but when it comes to Medi-Cal issues and long-term care, you need to, at very least, make sure your durable power of attorney for finance addresses these issues to say, look, if I can't make financial decisions, I am empowering you, my backups, to take steps to protect my assets from Medi-Cal. A simple power of attorney form will not address that. We always go through this with clients to make sure we have the best powers we can to deal with Medi-Cal as it changes and to help your long-term care. So we had a good question from Catherine. Is it possible the government will eliminate taxes on special needs trusts to help disabled folks with more assets? And no, we don't see that happening. So trust tax is 101. If a trust makes income, the trust pays income tax. But there's some nuance here. If a trust earns income and it distributes it to the beneficiary pays income taxes on that. We don't, if anything, actually trusts are punished from an income tax standpoint. Sometimes they have higher income tax rates than individuals. So we don't see any changes coming there. Thoughts, Mike?
No, I think we're past the end, frankly.
Well,
Um,
I think there's okay. Yeah,
yeah,
that's fine.
I am
Um,
summoned.
You're summoned. Well, Mike will have to drop off.
Mark can
And
continue.
we did have some very detailed questions in around Medi-Cal, and
Yeah,
again, we can't
can't do this.
we can't
Way too
go into
much.
that. Another question. Let's do this one last question. I have a rental that I used to live in. Can we find a way to get the $1 million in protection under Prop 19 for our kids to protect that? So the answer there is if you moved back in and made it your primary residence, you could at least get the $1 million in reassessment protection if your kid makes it their residence. Bottom line, though, that means wherever you're living now, if you own that, that wouldn't be protected. Prop 19 only allows one property to be protected. And even then, if your kid ever moves out, it's not. So talk to us. If you want to protect houses or a rental from reassessment, talk to us. And we have to keep capital gains taxes in mind too. Don't just find some solution you think keeps the property taxes low, but you don't get the stepped up basis. It's a whole thing. Talk to us. So anyway, bottom line is thank you. So we have such a great, huge audience here. If anybody's
Great.
watching on YouTube, either live or later, leave comments if you have questions and contact us at gilfix.com. Subscribe, share this with anyone who could benefit from it. But thank you so much for joining us here today. It's a privilege to get some of your
It is.
time and attention. I hope you got a lot out of it. So take